later that you wouldn't have been able to leave, is that right?
Absolutely. We left, I think, within a fortnight of Saddam coming to power, and a few months later he declared war on Iran. My brother and I would have been conscripted.
Exactly, yes.
We were of an age where we would have been conscripted, and because of my father not being a member of the Ba'ath Party, my mother being British, and of course because of his Persian background,
yes,
we would have been earmarked as frontline fodder. We would have been quite expendable.
Did you have school friends who did indeed die in that conflict?
Yes, quite a few. And it wasn't until later in life that the sense of guilt would well up, that I'd got away and a lot of my friends didn't.
Right, that's the survivor's guilt.
Yes, yes.
So you would be one of those people, and it is an unfashionable standpoint these days to think, well, regime change was reason enough.
For me, yes. For me personally, Saddam was responsible for, well, not just for friends of mine who were killed in the wars, but he had executed friends and relatives of mine. A close friend of mine was a second cousin that I spent summer holidays with in Baghdad. A year or so after we left Iraq, he was arrested. His parents and older sister were taken by the secret police in the middle of the night and dumped on the Iraq-Iran border and told to make a new life for themselves in Iran. He was arrested, not to be heard of again, and it was only about 7 or 8 years later we heard he'd been executed for no reason other than the fact that his father was a middle-class intellectual.
Let's have some music then. Tell me about your next track. We're on disc number 4 now.
My fourth track is a classical piece by Rimsky-Korsakov. My mother used to listen to this a lot, and the only other Rimsky-Korsakov piece I remember was The Flight of the Bumblebee, which whenever I heard it, I'd get ever so scared and go and hide. Something about that piece. But this one is Shahrazad, which conjures up these images of Arabian Nights and the life I've left behind.
That was the opening of Rimsky-Korsakov's Scheherazade. Jim Al-Khalili, you've written many books, and some of them I even begin to understand. You've written about the scientific developments under Islam, which were, in a particularly golden period, significant. Do you think that we in the West tend to overlook that, tend to conveniently forget those developments and that connection?
Yes, we learn that 2,000 years ago the ancient Greeks were wonderful scholars and philosophers and very, very clever. And then Western Europe went into the Dark Ages for 1,000 years and nothing happened. And we forget that just because there were Dark Ages in Western Europe, it doesn't mean we have to extrapolate it to the rest of the world. And at the time that Europe was in its Dark Ages, in medieval times, the Islamic Empire was celebrating a golden age of scholarship, and there was a lot of great advances in science.
At one point, am I right in saying that you tried to replicate the work that was done by a Persian mathematician, Biruni? Tell me about that.
Biruni, I would regard as the Da Vinci of the Islamic world. He was a philosopher, geographer, mathematician, astronomer, and so on. One of the most incredible things he did was measure the circumference of the Earth. He knew the Earth was round. What he did was climb to the top of a mountain and measure the angle of dip to the horizon, and then used geometry and trigonometry to work out the size of the Earth, 25,000 miles, to within 1% accuracy.
And this was in the 10th century?
This was in the 10th century. It's absolutely incredible. So we tried to replicate this, and I found 2 professional surveyors with their theodolites, so we could measure these angles very, very accurately, and we thought we'd done a very good job, only to find that our size of the Earth was only about a tenth of what it should be. Biruni, this 10th century scholar, could do so much better than we could in the 21st century.
Let's talk a little bit more then about you landing as this 16-year-old in England. With your family, you settled in Portsmouth because that was where your mother's family came from. At that point, did you know that science was for you?
At that point, yes. And I knew I wanted to do physics.
I mean, you were instantly popular among the teachers, I'm imagining, because you were such a clever fellow. What about among the pupils?
The school, well, it used to be the Portsmouth Southern Grammar School for girls. In fact, it was the school that my mother went to. And it was a school that my wife Julie went to, whom I met in the 6th form when I arrived there. But my year was the one just